This is the best time of the year for me after session because I get a chance to travel around Texas and tell the folks what we did in session that's going to impact their lives dramatically. In this session, there were a lot of very positive things that happened in the 140 days. First and foremost, let's talk about property tax relief. For those of you over 65, I've heard the refrain, gosh, I have to pay school taxes until I die? I mean, every year, even if my house is paid for? Well, the answer is no more, because we passed a bill out of the Senate, passed and signed by the governor, to give you a $200,000 homestead exemption on your homes. And what that means is if you're over 65, for the average homeowner, you will not have to pay school taxes the rest of your life. If you're under 65, we've increased your homestead exemption from $100,000 that we increased it to last session to $140,000 this session. And what does that mean to you? That means if you live in a $250,000 home, you're going to take $140,000 off of that and pay taxes on a home that's valued at $110,000 when you take your deduction. So that will save you about half of the money you were paying in school taxes just a few years ago. So seniors, the average homeowner, you won't pay school taxes anymore, and under 65, they'll be cut about 50%. What did we do on education other than that? Well, when we talk about property taxes, understand that when we're saying we're cutting your property taxes, what we are doing is writing a check for you in your place. So the schools aren't losing out. It's just we are taking your place on the property taxes instead of you having to write that check. So the schools are fully funded, but in addition to that, we've increased funding $8.5 billion more than any other time in history to public education. But we're doing it differently. And on a bipartisan basis, Republicans and Democrats almost unanimously, we decided to fund schools differently. We wanted to focus on issues that we hear from our voters all across the state in every district of how they would like to see those dollars spent. Number one, teachers. So out of the $8.5 million, over $4 billion is for teacher pay. The average teacher pay in Texas was around $54,000 not that long ago, 5 or 6 years ago. And after this session, the average pay will be $69,000. And if you're an Excel teacher, you could make up to $70,000 or $80,000. So we wanted to put money where it's most important, because the most important person in the classroom, in the school system, is the teacher, and we want to attract the best and brightest of the profession and keep those. Secondly, we've formed a bucket to pay for everyone else who works at the school. So there's money specifically aimed at the bus drivers, the cafeteria workers, the maintenance workers, and infrastructure in the schools. We put almost $1 billion in a bucket for special needs children, and we put a special bucket for school security. So we're still sending the superintendents their money per student, but of the additional money, the state of Texas is directing where it should go, because in the past, quite frankly, we were funding schools. In fact, we've almost doubled funding in the last 10 years to schools, but the teachers weren't getting, at the legislative viewpoint, their share of that money, and they're the most important person in the school. Secondly, we're changing the culture in our schools. We're bringing back prayer and the 10 Commandments to our public schools. How does the 10 Commandments work? Every school is required to put a 16 by 20-inch frame copy of the 10 Commandments in every classroom, but it's not an unfunded mandate. We're asking you to take those to the school. So if you're a church, adopt a school. If you're a business, adopt a school. If you're an individual, find out how many classrooms there are, and however many you can afford to print up and frame, take them to the school. And they're required to put those 10 Commandments in every classroom. Prayer back in public school. We're not compelling anyone to pray. We're just saying that anyone who wants to pray has that private time. I've always been curious that we take our kids and our grandkids to church on Sundays and Sunday school, and then Monday through Friday we say you can't talk about that in school. So now you can talk about that again. Last session we made sure in Texas, in the Texas Senate, and the governor signed the bill, that boys are not allowed to play sports in girls' sports in Texas and cross over. And we're looking at other issues to be sure the DEI and the wokeness is out of our public school system. Your students should go there to learn, and we can create the best public education system in the world by focusing on teachers and taking the wokeness out of our 1,200 school districts. Then, students are going to have choice for the first time in history. I passed the school choice bill 5 times out of the Senate, 5 times. And we never got it passed. In fact, we never even got a hearing most of those years in the House. But working with Dustin Burrows, the new speaker, best speaker I've ever worked with, quite frankly, in my 10 years as lieutenant governor, we passed school choice. That program is the largest launch in the history of the world, $1 billion for 100,000 students starting in 2026. And so parents, you'll be getting information about this time next year, or a little earlier than that actually, of where you can apply and how you can apply. I want to settle this one argument that we hear sometimes from the public school system. System says, well, all of these options for parents will undermine public education. Absolutely not true. We're spending $1 billion for 100,000 students for school choice, and in public school, we're spending $86 billion, 86 to 1, for 5.5 million kids. There's no way that school choice is going to undermine public education. They said the same thing about homeschooling. Well, that's going to undermine public education. It didn't, and today over 600,000 parents homeschool. They said the same thing about charters. It just gives parents more choices because the parent deserves to make that choice. The border, that's always been a big issue, particularly during the last 4 years of Joe Biden. And what did we do on the border? We said on day one, if President Trump is elected, I said this back in October many times when I was on Fox Television or other networks, that the border will be closed on day one. We knew how to do it. We were doing it on our own. We just didn't have an administration who helped us. In fact, they worked against us. So in the last 4 years under Biden, about 15 million crossed, thousands and thousands and thousands a day. As soon as Trump came in and working with Texas on 2/3 of the border that we have with Mexico, those crossings now are down to a couple of dozen a day trying to get across the river. So we've shut down the cartels on that issue. Law enforcement. As Lieutenant Governor last session, I traveled the state. I went to 133 different cities in Texas on a bus tour, or last election, not last year, the last cycle. And as I traveled, I found out our sheriffs were not making enough money, and they run our jails. They run our counties. They are law enforcement in rural Texas. So we put $350 million into rural Texas, which are almost all the counties in Texas, with the exception of about 19 big counties. And so our sheriffs are guaranteed a minimum of a $75,000 salary, and our deputies are now making in the 40s, and our jailers, because we want people who want to stay in law enforcement not to have to go to a big city to make a good paycheck. And we funded that program again, and we will again, and we will again. Because rural Texas is, rural Texas is usually just saying, just give us the help we need. We don't need extra, just take care of us. So this time what we did, on top of the police, what we did last year, or the sheriffs, this year we put $90 million into rural Texas for more ambulance, more emergency crews, and we continue building out our hospitals all across rural Texas. We added 5 new mental health care hospitals last session. We're continuing to do that building. Infrastructure, that's the key. If we don't have enough power on the grid, the Texas Miracle does not continue to work. And the Miracle is working great. Again, we were the #1 job creator in Texas, in America rather, in Texas for the last decade since Governor Abbott and myself became elected governor and lieutenant governor, 10 years in a row. About 1,000 people a day are moving here. We now have our own Texas Stock Exchange, which will begin on Valentine's Day next year. Everyone wants to come to Texas. This is where the American dream is still alive, whether it's a big company, small company, an entrepreneur, or just an individual. So we have to meet those needs on power, water, and infrastructure for roads. We've put almost $30 billion invested into those 3 areas, another $5 billion to build more natural gas plants, which we need. Wind and solar are fine, but if the wind's not blowing and the sun's not out, then we have an issue. And we're going to have to address water. In some parts of the state, it's already dry, as you know, in parts of West Texas. So we've invested $3 billion to start that program. On top of $2 billion we've addressed or invested in water the last couple of sessions. And roads, we're spending more money on roads than we've ever spent in Texas. We have to keep up our infrastructure. So those are the big issues: property tax relief, investments in school, investments in teachers, law enforcement, securing the border, and our infrastructure. With that, I'll take any questions.
There's obviously been a lot of debate on the legislative floor and a lot of differing public opinion on school choice. So hearing the backlash, and most of it seems to be aimed at the idea of diverting public funds to private education, how do you view the program as a success over, maybe the next 2 years as it's slowly implemented? So
let me say this again. We did not take $1 from public education for school choice, not $1. In fact, we gave public schools an extra $8.5 billion. We gave schools an extra $8.5 billion, half of that directed to teachers. Not $1 came out of public education. And I'll repeat the number again. School choice, new fund, $1 billion. Public schools, with our increased fund this year, $86 billion. $1 billion, $86 billion. 100,000 kids in school choice, $5.5 million in public schools. Anyone who says school choice undermines public education either doesn't know the facts, or they know the facts and aren't telling you the truth. Yes, sir.
My guy was wondering about the THC prohibition and what it would do for crime and healthcare.
Yeah. So THC, which is the main ingredient in marijuana, is being sold around schools all across Texas. It is a scourge upon our young people to hook them on drugs forever, and it's something that the legislature really didn't start seeing until last year, and I started investigating it, and here's what I found. That there are 8,000 or more smoke shops and vape shops that have opened in Texas just in the last 3 to 4 years. 8,000. I'm going to put that in comparison. We only have 1,100 McDonald's in the entire state. So we have 8 times more smoke shops than we have even a McDonald's. And they are selling high-level, very potent THC, the main ingredient, into marijuana, at levels at 3, 4, and 5 times. And I've never smoked pot, but for those who did, the story is, in the old days, it was here, today it's here. And they're selling it in the forms of candy and popcorn and cookies and drinks. And where are they building them? The vast majority are built within 1,000 feet of your schools. And we have horrendous cases every week, it seems. Just last week in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, they had to send 7 students from a graduation ceremony home because they had consumed gummies that someone bought at one of these smoke shops that had 4 to 5 times the level of intoxicating THC. And so we have to ban it. We cannot poison our students. We had a student that tried some of this in a smoke shop in Houston in February, came home and shot his mother 3 times. We had testimony of a 22-year-old who walked out in front of a train in El Paso. Schizophrenia, paranoia. The calls to our poison center for THC is up 500% in the last few years. So this was not controversial for the legislature. They passed it overwhelmingly, and we have to ban it. Again, 8,000 shops near schools trying to poison our kids. And for those who say, well, but I needed my THC, self-medicating on things you don't even know what's in the package that are very potent can absolutely do more damage to you, to your health. And so we've created the biggest Texas teacup program, which is Texas Compassionate Use Program for those who actually need it. On those programs, you get a prescription from a doctor, whether you have cancer, PTSD, chronic pain. Those programs will open up all across Texas to serve that portion who believe, that portion of the public, that they need help. So the industry will be crying, oh, you can't shut us down, all these mom and pop shops. Trust me, these are not mom and pop shops. There may be a few. This was an assault on the state of Texas by California, Colorado, China, and Mexico to poison your kids with highly intoxicated THC. 8,000 shops didn't open overnight in shopping centers, all looking alike, with all the same products. No one woke up in the morning and said, I'm a small business person. I think I'll find a drug connection somewhere, maybe out of China or California or wherever, and start a store. No, this is an assault on Texas, and we're going to close that loophole. Thank you. Thank you for the questions. All right.
Thank you very much.
Great
sir.
questions.
Hey, thanks, sir. Thank you. Nice meeting you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Nice meeting you as well.
Great.